Welcome to Cradle and All, a podcast hosted by sisters Renita and Christine to educate, inspire, and connect with other mothers. Every other week, listen as we discuss topics related to pregnancy, raising children, and balancing motherhood with other aspects of womanhood. Whether you're relaxing, juggling tasks, or even breast pumping, join us as we figure it out together. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to Cradle and All.
Hi, everybody. It's so exciting to be back. We've been gone for a minute, but we're back.
We've missed you. I hope you've missed us too.
Yes, we're so happy to be here. We have taken some time to do some things, and really it's been pretty much a whole season, a literal season, and a break for us. So last time we were speaking with you all, it was spring. Now it's summer. So Renita, what have you been up to in the past season?
Oh my gosh. I think it's just been so busy. Like, where does the time go? But I feel like between the time that we were last on to now, I've been running behind the two boys. Jackson is literally obsessed with his brother and his cousins, but he's talking so much more. We've traveled, gone on trips with the kids and you guys. We've moved into a new house, so just to that. And just, the craziness, busyness. So I'm excited to get back into the swing of talking with this community of moms and really utilizing this as an opportunity to touch base on all the things that are important to us as moms as women.
Yeah, you guys did do a lot. That's right. Y'all moved.
Yeah.
And vacation. It's been busy. It's been a fun spring. Spring has probably been the best season for me all year so far.
Yeah. What's new?
Well, did we move? No, we had already moved.
You had just moved right at the beginning of spring, end of winter.
Yeah. It was February. So we also have vacation. We took a couples trip, my husband and I, and then we also vacationed with the Whites and our parents, our first time ever doing a full family trip with our kids, which is a long time coming because we planned it in 2020 and then we finally were able to do it. Yes. And doing some things with the kids. So getting them involved now that we finally are able to do that. We put Dakota in swim and Dallas in karate. And
and Jackson are in karate together.
Yeah, they've been getting into that. And then also just busy with my business, the nanny agency that I own is picking up, and my job had been super busy. I had traveled for work again, which I used to do before COVID, which now getting back into doing that, which was really fun to get out there again. So it's been a fun spring and into summer, but we are now back and looking forward to having conversations with guests, and we're actually welcoming a guest to begin our second season today.
Yes. It's going to be so great. I was very excited to talk about the topic we're going to discuss today, but especially excited to talk with an old friend, Samantha Griffin, who I went to college with. So, we really wanted to start the season talking about support people and how you can get that support through labor. And one of the greatest ways that you can get that is through a doula. So I think we mentioned that option, and it's nice to actually speak to somebody who is a doula and can provide those kind of services. So being able to talk with Samantha, she was able to give us some feedback into what her experience is like caring for other women who use these services, whether it's a C-section or vaginal delivery. And so hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy hearing our discussion with her.
Yeah. So with the doula, Renita, I know before I had children, I really envisioned myself having a doula and having a very natural and holistic experience. But I felt like it was something that was just out of reach. And I know that she'll speak about that, but I felt like it was out of reach, but it also made me think about just levels of support that you receive when you're when you're going through the birthing process, when you're in the hospital. And in your experience, like when he's thinking specifically about doulas, is that a service that a lot of women you think are aware of and take advantage of? Because of course you're in the hospital weekly.
Honestly, I think more and more women could look into this as an option because sometimes the labor and delivery experience can be a mystery when you've never really even gone to the hospital, let alone, needed any kind of medical services before you got pregnant. So sometimes people get confused on a midwife versus a doula, how to get access to a doula. So I was so glad to be able to talk with her about way you can easily access one. And then the other misconception is that doulas are only there for the labor and delivery process. So it was so eye-opening to hear the other different ways that doulas provide services. Even for me, as somebody in the healthcare field, I was like, oh, wow, there are a lot of different ways that can be of use. So hopefully in listening to this, more and more people will look at this as an option and know that it's a great benefit to have that extra bit of support.
Yeah, because it feels like it goes towards advocacy. And that's really what you want in the entire pregnancy process and labor and delivery process, is someone who really knows about what's happening to your body, advocating for you. And I know in my experience, luckily you were there, or if it wasn't you, I felt like I had my husband or a partner who was in the room with me to help bring about my speak for me, because of course when you're going through the delivery process, you really aren't in your clearest frame of mind. So yeah.
No, I think that's so true. And interesting, for me, I was like, oh, I'm not going to really need a doula. I'd done this from a work perspective and I've got my husband, and I really talked with Bryson about what I needed him to support me verbally to other people, but physically as I was going through the changes of labor pain. But in talking with Samantha and hearing about some of the different experiences that she has with other women, I was like, wow, that could have been really useful for me in the postpartum period where I felt like I was kind of struggling a little bit. So anybody could use these kind of services. And I think people will be really enlightened to hear how that conversation went.
Awesome. So I know you guys also have a personal connection. How do you know her?
Yes. So we went to college together. So I went to Duke University for undergrad. And so we were there at the same time. And so it's very interesting because she'll tell her story about how she got into this field, but, at the time I didn't know that was something that she was interested in. And I was always interested in obstetrics. So, it's just really nice to reconnect and see how things end up for where we are in our careers and everything like that.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. I always loved that about Duke, how you always stayed in touch with everybody from your...
It's like a small world there. It's like a small school, small world, like the way that you end up connecting with people.
All right, you all. Well, we hope that you enjoy the conversation.
And we look forward to having you here for the next few episodes and welcoming you back to another season.
Yep, we've got some really great conversations and topics for this season. So we hope that you'll stick with us and enjoy the episode and the conversation.
Enjoy. All right, you guys. Well, I'm so excited today to have another guest. We are going to be talking with Samantha Griffin, and she is a doula based out of Washington, D.C. We actually went to college together. So she is devoted her career to taking care of women in the pregnancy and postpartum period. She is a certified birth doula and a postpartum doula, and also a certified childbirth educator. She created and founded her company, DC Metro Maternity, out in DC. So please welcome Samantha Griffin. Thanks for being here with us today.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, today we're talking all about the labor and delivery experience and all the support that can come along with it. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about is, what exactly is a doula? So talk to us a little bit about how you would describe the job of a doula and what that is.
Yeah, so the classic way that we describe doula support is that we provide physical, educational, and emotional support during pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period, but nobody knows what that means. So I like to compare us to wedding planners or maybe guidance counselors. Where people,
That's a good way to say it.
Right? Like, we're people who are familiar with the process. So if you think about your wedding planner, she knows the vendors, she knows how a wedding usually goes, what you can expect, what the challenges are that might come up, and how to make things easier. We are like that for...
I love that. So can you talk a little bit about how you even got into this career field.
Yeah. When I went to college, I worked with girls in the foster care system, and many of them ended up pregnant. The statistic at that point was about a third of them were leaving DC's foster care system, either pregnant or parenting. Yeah, a lot of babies having babies, as they say. And also, in particular, these young women were really disconnected from like their families of origin. And I learned that birth can be really kind of scary and lonely, and it can change your whole life in either a good way or a really challenging way. And then as I got further into public health and specifically Black women's health, I learned about maternal mortality and infant mortality and some of those scary statistics. And so my first introduction into the idea of pregnancy and birth, because this was all in my early to mid 20s, I had not even thought about having my own kids yet. It really was not a positive entry, I think, into thinking about those things. But I also was really convinced that this shouldn't be how it is. Yeah. Very quickly, I thought, there must be people who help people. And I did a Google search, because that's what you do. And I found out that midwives still existed. And I also then found out that doulas were a thing, because I was really clear that I was not about to go to med school and become an OB, although I am so thankful for OBs. So thank you for your work. But I thought that maybe I would become a midwife, except as I got more and more into the field, I found that I really love being someone who has a lot of time to connect with clients, who does not have to take on the volume that medical providers have to. And I get to build relationships. There are people who I meet in pregnancy and I am close with them for years after. And I love that.
Oh, that is so amazing. But it's so true, because pregnancy is a big part of your life, even if it's just for 9-10 months or what have you. And it really shapes your life. So having people who can kind of be there, cater to you, help you to kind of get through this can impact your entire life. So I love that.
It's such a big transition point for so many of us. Yeah. I think, people like, you and I and the folks we went to school with, we spend a lot of our life really focused on, okay, who am I going to become? What am I going to do in the world? And then for a lot of people, most of our clients are Black women. And for a lot of us, motherhood is really like a next step, and it's a huge part of our identity. So it's a physical change, but it also is an emotional change and like a whole transition in your life. And it's, I think, so valuable to have people around you who care and who can take the time to listen. And we need that on the medical side, but we also need that in other ways.
Oh, for sure. So for many of your clients, what is the time that you actually meet them? When are people reaching out to you to hire you? And when is the ideal time for somebody to hire a doula?
Yeah, so it runs the gamut. Every once in a while, we get someone who just peed on a stick. Or...
the excitement's already there.
Yes. Or a decent number of our clients have had fertility challenges. And so, they know when an embryo transfer was successful. And so some people will call us very early in the first trimester. I would say the ideal time is maybe mid-second trimester to early third trimester. That gives you lots of time to connect with your labor doula. It gives you time to talk about the postpartum period. It gives you time to make a realistic and flexible birth plan, because what we dream of in trimester 1 may not actually be what we want by the time we're 39, 40 weeks.
That's so true.
You're like, just get the baby out safely. These are still my priorities. But yeah, people change their mind a lot over the course of 9 or 10 months.
There are so many feelings. Like I remember in my first birth, I was like, I can't believe I'm going to have a baby come out of me. I'm so scared. Like, is it going to hurt? By the end, I was like, okay, when's this happening? Like, hurry up. You know what I'm saying?
I know, it's mind blowing. And like, I still haven't had kids. So even though I've seen it, I'm very familiar with the process. Every time I'm just awestruck and I'm like, oh, wow, you just did that. That happened.
It's always like the most amazing feeling, like being a part of this miracle every single time. So it's really exciting to be a part of that. I know we're
gets
lucky
old.
for that. Never does. Never.
Yeah.
So, you said that sometimes people will get to you really early, or sometimes they may choose to get to you late. What are some of the services that you would provide? And because of course there's postpartum, there is in the pregnancy, there's labor and delivery, but what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So there are all kinds of doulas, for people listening. If you want a fertility doula, you can have one. You can have what we call an antepartum doula.
That is awesome. I've never heard of a fertility doula.
Oh, listen.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. If people are having, a lot of Black women have fibroids, people have fertility challenges, and there are folks who really specialize in like going through that process with you. And it's amazing.
Wow.
I just turned 35, so I might be calling one of my colleagues when I get around to it. But personally, we focus on labor and postpartum. So when we talk about labor doulas, that's what a lot of people picture, the birth doula. And in addition to being there on the big day, we do some preparation with our clients. So typically your doula will meet with you a few times. We do at least 2 in-person visits. They're usually about an hour to an hour and a half long. So we're sitting down and talking through birth plans. I always put plans in quotes in my head because it's really a plan A, B, and C. We like to build in some flexibility. Some of our clients are looking for a less medicalized birth, but we also help people plan for, how to manage things before they get an epidural, or if an induction is a part of your story, like just knowing what's coming and what options you have. And then we often will take time to really practice some coping skills. So breathing techniques, positions, whatever it is that's going to help people get through labor, because it's a lot. And then if we're working with folks as postpartum doulas, sometimes we meet them during pregnancy, and that's my ideal. I don't think that we should leave the actual taking care of the baby to chance. That gives us a chance to talk about, infant feeding, whether you're going to breastfeed, formula, some combination. It helps us give people some advice on how to actually use their parental leave and how to get a maternity leave that it's never a vacation, but never, ever. You can use it really intentionally to bond with your baby, your partner or spouse, if that's applicable, actually get some rest and healing in. And so when we're working with people postpartum, we can work with them, just a few hours at a time to months at a time. For some people, we're doing like overnight support and helping them get through those sleepless nights so that they can like take a nap, be refreshed in the morning. We can also do just really practical things like making sure that folks are actually eating and, taking a shower. That people know what their physical recovery is, and they're not just obsessed with like a snapback and, trying to make your body into what it was before kids, but really like resting and recovering and figuring out what this new phase is like.
No, that's amazing. There's actually studies that show the benefits of being supported by doulas in the birthing experience can have better outcomes for patients. Yeah. So I've seen it myself, having patients be supported with doulas or with other family members, or having preparation leading up to delivery. But what are some of the things that you would recommend for any listeners out there as to reasons why they should have a doula?
I really think that there's so much power in education. I mean, of course I say that. We met in college. I don't take it for granted, though, that most of us that are old enough to be listening to, a podcast about pregnancy and motherhood, and really, I don't even think kids now, we did not get a sexual health education that included much about reproductive health. Even if you got more information about your body, pregnancy just wasn't really covered. And so I think that a lot of us are flying blind when we get pregnant.
Yeah.
And I recommend that people take a childbirth education class, whether or not they actually hire a doula. So that way you go informed. You can have actual conversations with your doctor or your midwife where you feel like you're an active participant in things.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes such a difference, because your appointments are short for good reason. If everything's normal, you don't need a lot of time in the doctor's office. But then at every doctor's office, at the end of the appointment, they're going to ask you, like, what questions do you have? As doulas, we can help you come up with those questions. We can help you, go in with some information and actually have an honest conversation. I also think that you can't underestimate, and maybe we've all learned this in the last couple of years of a pandemic, the importance of someone physically being there with you who cares for you.
Oh, yeah.
If everything is normal, then most people in their labor and delivery room are not like staring eye to eye with their OB for most of labor. I don't even think we would want that. It's a lot of pressure. We need doctors to be busy doing doctor things. But having someone there who can tell you, hey, it is totally normal to be nauseous. It is totally normal for, the intensity of this thing that you're doing to feel a little bit overwhelming. This amount of emotion is normal. That really can take the temperature down on things and decrease so much tension. And anyone who has watched a lot of births happen knows you cannot get a baby out of a very tense body easily. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what we're doing is really just attending to those emotional needs and making sure that people know what's going on. And I in particular think that it's really important for anyone who feels, I want to say, intimidated by hospitals.
Oh, or
by pregnancy, because it's a really big deal. Like, somebody's growing in your body.
Not to mention, I think there's a lot of fear surrounding pregnancy because of the unknown. Like, you may have spent your whole life trying not to be pregnant, and now you are pregnant. So it's like, okay, wait, what do I do? What does this mean? Is this normal? Mm-hmm. Or maybe you've had an unfortunate experience before, whether it be a miscarriage or a bad hospital experience where I'm going into this hospital for something that you may be carrying with you. So there can be a lot of fears that come along with it. Yeah. So I love the idea of just supporting somebody, knowing, okay, this is normal. Another thing that I've witnessed a lot of, and I'm sure you have heard a lot of, but more and more of my patients coming in saying, I'm scared of harm in my pregnancy. I'm scared of death. I'm scared that somebody's not going to listen to me. So I'm witnessing a lot of people harbor these concerns when this is supposed to be such an exciting time. So just helping my patients to realize, okay, there are things that we need to keep an eye on. We're in this team together. You're part of this team. We're working together. And so I just really love that you're really kind of setting those tones with patients to know it's okay to have a safe space to talk and speak up when you're nervous about something. Some of your things you're feeling may be, normal, but that's okay. And also the preparation in the beginning, because knowing in advance that there's going to be things out of your control, but how to kind of navigate that is going to be so important.
Yes. I think you really hit the nail on the head. Thinking about the unknown is hard regardless. And then a lot of people right now are hearing about these terrifying statistics. Mm-hmm. And on the one hand, I'm really thankful that more people are aware and we're getting attention. We're now getting legislative attention.
Yeah.
It's positive overall, right? But when I think about actually having a child as someone who fits certain demographics, I'm like, oh gosh, that is really scary. And because labor is intense, and I'll just say it's painful for most people.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I haven't seen a lot of orgasmic births.
I've never in my life seen that.
I love it as a concept. I would not be a good doula if I dismissed it as a possibility, but y'all, that is not the expectation that I set.
Not at all.
And so since it is painful and the pain is a normal part of the process, I think that already sets us up to worry, like, oh, well, what if this isn't the right kind of pain? What if I'm going to be ignored? What if I'm going to be overlooked? And I also really like that you talk about being on a team with your patients, because I encourage them to go where they feel safe with their doctors or their midwife, whoever their provider is, because it should be a team. And as a doula, there's old stereotypes about us fighting against OBs and creating like a ruckus in the delivery room. And, it's just not the time for anybody to be adversaries. Like, we're not in a courtroom, we're in a birth room. We want to make everybody who's having a baby feel really safe, really cared for and loved. And I think if we can normalize the parts that might be hard but are normal, then we can deal with together the parts that are kind of scary and, the disparities that we have to overcome as a community.
Absolutely. I love how in the beginning you mentioned that you think of yourself as a wedding planner, because in my mind, I oftentimes think that my experience with women during the labor and delivery process is going to be like a wedding, the biggest day of your life. You may not remember what I look like. You may not remember what the rest of the staff looks like, but you're going to remember the day your baby was born. So what can we do to make this so special? So many of the times when I talk about birth plans with patients, it's geared to what's important to you, what is things that you were nervous about or concerned about, and what's a required thing versus what's not required. Those are the kind of conversations that we have about birth plans. So there's some things that are hospital policy. There's some things that maybe needed an emergency. So let's talk about that in advance, so we know if that happens, what it would look like. But can you talk a little bit about what your discussions are like as a doula with patients regarding birth plans?
Yeah, I like to really lay out all of the options. We're seeing more and more, I've noticed it especially in the last year, that more of our local provider practices are like giving some kind of checklist, which I think is great, because what often happens when people Google birth plan is they get some far out stuff or they get a very long list of things that are possible. And depending on your birthplace, some things are going to be feasible and some are not. If you want a water birth, but you're going to a hospital that does not have a birth tub, it's just not possible. And so let's talk about what is available to you, maybe a shower or something like that. So first I talk about what's available at their birthplace. And then I also like to talk about like what is typical and expected. And so things like getting an IV when you go in, what the check-in process looks like, what positions can you push in. We can give them all of the options. And then if, as I'm talking to a client, I notice, hey, this isn't what I think their doctor is probably going to be used to, I immediately am like, okay, when's your next appointment? Let's take this in. Let's have this conversation, which is another reason why it's great to hire us earlier in the third trimester, because then you have several months to have these conversations.
Yeah. Now, what about women who are going to have a C-section, whether it be planned or when it happens unplanned? Can you talk a little bit about what services can be provided or how it may change the services you provide to these kind of clients?
Yeah. So, C-section is still a birth, right? And so all of the preparation, all of the education, we're educating about different things, maybe what the surgery is going to be like, what their partner can expect, because typically their partner can be in the room with them, what they can expect afterwards. And then we go with clients on the day of. Now, it's not always realistic for us to be in our room with them, but we can wait for them before and after. We can be in the recovery room, still help with that first latch if they're planning on breastfeeding, and then definitely help them figure out what recovery is like. If it's planned, then we go in the morning. Usually things are scheduled in the morning, all planning to do this together. And if it's unplanned, then typically we've been laboring with them, and we're really trying to help them process this change so that they know what's going on. And I think sometimes what we're doing is really affirming for them. Everyone here is working to keep you safe. This is not, something bad that's being done to you. Here are XYZ reasons why this might be going on. We can get the nurses and the doctors to confirm. So that way, again, it feels like a team so that everyone is truly keeping folks safe.
That's great. No, I love that, especially because I have found that in those kind of emergency situations when you need to move really quickly, like let's say there's a C-section because there's something going on that requires an urgent delivery for baby. Yeah. It's moving so fast and everyone's doing their part to get baby delivered quickly. But sometimes as a mom, as a patient, the family members are like, what's going on? What's happening? I know from personal experience, both of my C-sections that I had were emergencies. So luckily I do this for a living. So I knew it was happening, but I had a great team who was wonderful about explaining it to my husband and surrounding family members. But it's so great to feel like you have people who can take care of you and baby and they're explaining things to you. So I think that's wonderful. Now, one of the last questions I have
sometimes for you, a 30-second explanation.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Like a 30-second explanation is like all you need to say, hey, this is what's happening. It's okay. I love that. Yeah. Now, one of the last questions I have for you is, there are lots of misconceptions that can be about any field of medicine or how we do deliveries, just because there's lots of different thoughts about childcare. But what are some of the misconceptions you have about doulas that you would want to kind of dismiss?
One of the biggest ones is that all of us are like hippy dippy, crunchy granola, whatever you want to call it. We are all like Earth Mama Erykah Badu. And I mean, I do have on Birkenstocks right now, but it's important that people know that doulas are not just for people who want to have a home birth or who want to have an out of hospital birth. I think a lot of the value that we actually bring, especially for most of the clients that I work with, who tend to be Black women who are, having their babies as like grown-ups, I like to say, it is really important that we know that, yes, even if you are a career woman who maybe doesn't do everything naturally and holistically and wants your epidural in the hospital, you can still have this level of support. That's the biggest misconception that I just want to shout from the rooftops about.
I love it. And I support all my patients in getting doulas, having people who love them, support them. I know the pandemic has been a challenge for sure. So many of my patients who've continued to use doula support have been able to do it virtually or have sessions in advance. And that is hopefully changing now that the hospital I work at is now opening up to more support people in the hospital system. But I'm just so glad to be able to educate more and more listeners about what services are available to them, including doula services. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today. And for people in the DC area, can you give us some information about your organization, your practice?
Yes. So it's called DC Metro Maternity. My name is Samantha Griffin, and I answer the phone if you call. You can find us at dcmetromaternity.com or at DC Metro Maternity on Instagram. We are actually a team of all women of color at the moment. We're all Black doulas, and that matters sometimes. It's really important to have that cultural congruency in a medical setting. And so, we would love to talk to you.
Perfect. So head her way if you're in DC.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a thing. And leave us a review. You can also follow us on Instagram at The Cradle and All or email us at thecradleandall@gmail.com.